let's dig into the biggest legal news of this week for FFRF and tell us about why we and a coalition of groups are intervening in behalf of Tennessee taxpayers in a lawsuit in Tennessee.
Yeah, so there's the theme in the last few years is religious churches and groups trying to get public money, and they want to do it for their schools. And the most recent version of that is in Knox County, Tennessee. A religious school, Wilberforce Academy, is trying to open as a public charter school. And so they have, in fact, sued the Knox County Board of Education, arguing that they have a legal right to get this public money and to operate as a public charter school. And so we're working with a number of other groups to stop that. So we're working with Americans United, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Education Law Center, and the ACLU. And we filed on behalf of 5 local individuals, parents and taxpayers, to intervene in that lawsuit. And in order to defend the Constitution and to say, no, you cannot actually operate and run a public religious charter school.
And maybe you should briefly say the background of this. Last year, there was a Supreme Court case that was ending in a tie against a religious charter school in Oklahoma. So they just won't give up, will they?
Right. I think it shows that they're after a legal outcome. And so because there was a tie at the U.S. Supreme Court, 4-4, Justice Barrett recused on that case. There's kind of a green light that the other side thinks, oh, we're going to now go all around the country and try to start religious charter schools and try to get a legal outcome that they want. They want, the U.S. Supreme Court to rule in their favor that this is a thing, that they can do. And so we worked with a coalition in that case. And again, here we're working with a lot of partners and local families to oppose this. There is a lot of opposition to this type of thing.
So speaking of this scheme for religious charter schools, we were part of a group that urged the Oklahoma officials to reject religious public charter school applications. And what's going on there, Patrick?
Yeah, so that's the latest iteration. So the case I mentioned before at the U.S. Supreme Court, that was also an Oklahoma case. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled you can't do this. And that was upheld by the Supreme Court because they had a tie. Now there's a new group coming in. It's actually like a Jewish virtual charter school trying to form in Oklahoma. And we signed on to a letter which was authored by Americans United and a number of other groups to oppose this because the charter school board for the state is going to vote on that application. And besides just the idea that it's this religious school, there's a number of problems in terms of discrimination. I think they're a lot more overt in saying that it's not going to be open to all students, certainly not all staff. There's a number of problems with the application. And again, it seems to be another attempt to get a legal outcome to open the floodgates to fund religious public schools, which shouldn't be a thing.
And it's pretty sneaky to work with a Jewish group that isn't for separation of state and church, that because they can try to say, see, this isn't Christian nationalism, this isn't privileging Christianity, but the floodgates would open for because most private religious schools are Christian. Well, so finally,
yeah, I think there's a lot of strategy. I think there's a lot of strategy to it in terms of who's requesting to open these schools.
So finally, good news, that's my favorite news this week, is that a judge has ruled that FFRF's hometown case against a religious tax exemption may proceed. And it's my favorite case because it's called Gaylor versus City of Madison. So Patrick, quickly, what is that about?
Yeah, it's about religion and money again. I guess that's where we keep coming back to. So the state of Wisconsin passed a law that favored 2 specific churches that were running apartment buildings in the city of Madison where FFRF is headquartered. And there's really no doubt that they were trying to target these 2 specific buildings so that they wouldn't have to pay any taxes, whereas all the other nonprofits that even run housing would have to pay. We sued about a year ago on your behalf, Annie Laurie, on Dan's behalf and another taxpayer, and on behalf of FFRF, because this violates really 4 different provisions of the Wisconsin Constitution. You can't create a special exemption for one property. Your property laws have to be uniform. They have to apply to the whole state. And so on January 30th, the judge ruled in our favor and ruled that our case can proceed. So all of the motions to dismiss our case by the city and by the legislature and by the churches were denied. And so we are looking forward to going forward in that case and hopefully, putting these properties back on the tax rolls.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick Elliott, our legal director, for coming on Freethought Radio to so expertly explain the current legal situation here.